There's few things I enjoy more than a round, delicious and balanced cup of coffee. Unfortunately for me and many home brewers, brewing with a French press actually doesn't give that, because it's always muddled and with all this sediment that it's just not tasteful. My friends, I developed this new technique for you to have the cleanest and most crisp cup of coffee you may have with a French press. Are you interested in that? Hold on there and I'll tell you in 1 second. Thank you for staying. Now, for this ultimate French press technique to get the cleanest cup, you're going to need only 3 things. First one is coffee. Coffee should be as fresh as it can be, and freshly ground, pet friendly, LGBTQ friendly, vegan. I really need to highlight that the freshness of the coffee is the secret for this technique, because thanks to it, we will get this clean and fresh sensation. The second ingredient is going to be the water. It can be any water you actually taste. Carbon filtered, tap water, or maybe from mineral source bottled water. I don't mind. Just make sure it's not too soft or too highly alkaline. And of course, you're gonna need a French press. It can be any type of press. Glass, plastic, isolated, I don't care. You just have to be aware of this. The mesh out of the plunger should be really flexible, or at least fit just like this in the whole body of the press. That's very important for this technique. So for this technique, you need a medium to medium fine grind, just as you can see. And that is because we want all the flavor to be readily available at the beginning of the extraction, and also for the fines to stay within the grounds. Now, using this type of grind setting is not very common for the recommendation at the French press. But hold on a second, it makes no sense. As it is an infusion brewing method, you need to help it out to bring out all the full taste. So this setting will give you a velvety and round heavy body you've always liked out of a French press. Now, for the last consideration about this technique, you should take into account to use 3/4 to the full amount of your French press. That's because we need to make a puck just at the bottom using the plunger. So the tip I want to give to you is pour the enough amount of coffee so that it will have the same volume below the plunger. So as you can see, I will use 18.7 grams of coffee. Finally, for the recipe, I've already checked that we need 18.5 grams of coffee, and that means I will use 275 ml of water. That is a 70 grams per liter ratio. It's a little bit in the upper side of the taste, but believe me, that's going to give you this intensity and flavorful cup. For the water, you want to use water off boil because you're going to pour it directly to the press. So the press and all the environment will suck some temperature out of the brewing water. But if, as me, you live in a city where the water boils too early at 93 degrees Celsius, well, you have to consider to preheat everything from the plunger to the French press. That's the only caution you may take. So let's go and brew some coffee. Now, let's go with my favorite part. This technique is very basic, very quick, and only in 3 steps. Step 1, add the hot water just off boil, remember that. My French press has already been preheated, so don't worry about that. Immediately after you finish up pouring the 265 ml, in this case, I will add the coffee immediately. So here you go. Pour it, add, and immediately after, but very gently, take your time to tap it. Do not remove it too hard, because you only want the coffee grounds to get saturated in the surface. Take your time, don't worry, consistently. Now, after the 45-second mark, in your scale, you will just plunge enough the press until you see a little bit of the brewed coffee comes above the plunger. Just like this. And now we have to wait. The whole idea of this technique is to make like a really, really long pre-infusion, 1 of 2 minutes. That will make all the flavors to be readily available to get to be extracted once you start to plunge. At the same time, we have to really be concerned about the size of this compact puck in the upper part of the press. The waiting time may vary. I am waiting only 2 minutes because I've tasted this coffee and it's very soluble. But in some cases, if you have your coffee being in your shelf like 3 or 4 or 5 weeks already ground, this phenomenon of floating will not be so dramatic as you can see right here. And if you can watch, the coffee is already going down. And that is because the gases that make them still get afloat are being solubilized or just being lost. So as you have a more aged coffee, this puck will not be formed. That is why it is very important to have a very fresh coffee and freshly ground. So 2 minutes and 45 seconds have passed, and our last step is to get a full breath. So, once you get to the bottom, don't plunge it too strongly, because if you do that, or if you don't have the enough amount of coffee to make this puck, all the sediments and all the mud will reincorporate to the liquid, and that's exactly what we don't want. So once you finish up plunging, immediately serve it to another vessel or wherever you may drink it for. Look at that. You wouldn't believe it's coming out from a French press. The color, it's beautiful. And I know you can't smell, but this coffee actually smells pretty strongly. So, this is it. Our last step would be to enjoy a very delicious, crisp, and clean cup of coffee. My friends, if you really like this video and would like me to share with you some more very curious techniques to get the best out of your coffees, please feel free to subscribe and follow us on our social media that will appear right here. And hey fellas, That's it for me. That's all for me today. See you in the next time.